All right, so selecting the right fittings for your plumbing system in your home is really important. It can be the difference of having a system that lasts a long time or a system that could possibly get a leak in a year. Today we're going to look at some options if you're using PEX in your home. We're going to look at some options on some brass fittings, one that's working well, one that could cause you leaks. We're going to look at also some plastic fittings and show you why you may want to select one over the other and which ones you want to avoid. So today we're going to be looking at plumbing fittings for PEX piping in your new home. Let's get going. All right, so selecting the right plumbing fittings for your home is really important. The first step that we recommend that you do is actually get a water test done. So take a sample of the water, if it's on a well or if it's a city water, wherever your actual potable water source is coming from, and let's send it to the lab and let's get tested. Let's look at it and see what's in there. It's going to help us determine what we're going to actually do as far as filtering for the house, but it's also going to tell us, do we have any corrosiveness in that water? A lot of times you're going to get a highly corrosive water out of a well system. So if we have a well, we're going to have some different options for fittings versus if we had city water per se and we didn't have a lot of potential for corrosion on those fittings. All right, so if you've decided to use PEX piping in your house, you got a couple different options for fittings. So what I have in front of me here, this is actually PEX A, and these are expansion fittings. So the cool thing about expansion fittings is it allows you to have the same diameter of the pipe through the actual fitting. So if you look through this, you'd have the same diameter all the way through. If you use the crimp style like PEX B, and you crimp this down, you're actually going to have a little bit of a reduction on the flow wherever your fittings are at. So that's one reason we chose to use PEX A. But with PEX A, there's different types of fittings. These are brass, and each one of these are two different types of brass that I'm going to go into, and you also have the option for plastic. So when you're using a well, it's really important to look at that corrosiveness like we were talking about in your water quality, because what happens if I have a completely plastic pipe and I want the brass, because the brass is potentially a stronger connection than a plastic fitting that could potentially crack. I want to make sure that the corrosiveness of that water is not going to attack these fittings. If you can imagine having a fully copper piped house, you have all of this copper that would allow the corrosiveness of water to kind of spread out through that system. Whereas if I only have specific points where I have fittings at, like this, I'm going to have that corrosiveness of the water. It's going to attack those specific locations, which will then potentially wear those down, wear those out, and get leaks in those sooner than if I had to spread out over the whole system. So the corrosiveness of the water is very important. With wells, a lot of times you want to default to with a plastic, okay? And the positive thing about the brass that I mentioned before is the brass it's stronger, okay? So you can put more pressure on this. If I had a little bit of a kink or pressure on a fitting like this, there's less chance of that fitting breaking, but there's a lot more of a possibility of the corrosion happening. All right, so I want to share with you the difference between these brass fittings and why one would leak way sooner than the other. So, and this is something, if you see this on your job or you see that your plumber bring this out, you want to make sure you get rid of these things as fast as possible. So this fitting here, it's really hard to see it, but you're going to see different markings on each one of these fittings. This one here up top is actually a Uponor fitting, which is a quality fitting. This is a half-inch T that you can see here. It has a U on it, and it's got some stamping on it here. So there's a term called dezinkification. And dezinkification is where you want fittings that have less than 15% zinc. So when you have a high level of zinc, over 15% inside of your brass, you have a much greater potential to get pinholes in this brass as it ages, and the corrosiveness of that water attacks that brass. So if you see really yellow brass that's typically has not been dezinkified and has a higher level of zinc in that brass, and that's not going to last as long. If you take a quick or kind of a closer look at these fittings, this is looks more brown, this brass. This is from Uponor, and this is a quality brass fitting. It's going to be strong and it's going to last. Has a dezinkification less than 15%. So if you look here, this is made by Welday, and it's not even really engraved on here, but it's a Welday fitting. And this one was actually purchased online. I think it was under the brand name Bluefin. But this is a Chinese fitting that was made, and it says right there on their website, this is not dezinkified brass. Do not use with any type of corrosive water in a home. And that should warn you really fast, because that's what it said. So every single one of these fittings that came out to this job site, it got thrown away, or if it got put in, it got cut out. Because this right here is something that you absolutely cannot have in the house. So I had a brass fitting made of a similar material, just like this, underneath the dishwasher that was connected. It was the water supply of the dishwasher at 90 right on the bottom, where it came off and then went to the supply line underneath the sink. Less than a year, this thing had water coming out of had pinholes in it and water squirting out of it. Just low quality brass that was not dezinkified. So you gotta make sure, if you're going with the brass and you want the longevity and the strength, make sure it's good brass and it's dezinkified. So whatever brand you're using, you gotta make sure you're looking for that in your plumbing fittings. All right, so if your home is serviced by a well, you're getting your potable water from a well, I'd highly recommend you looking at using plastic fittings. And this completely eliminates the concern for having any corrosiveness in your water. It's attacking your fittings and getting pinhole leaks, say in a ceiling system like above me here, where you're like, dang, I got to cut out the drywall later. So it completely eliminates that. But the one thing you do need to be considerate of is making sure you get a good quality fitting. This is an Uponor fitting, but get a good quality fitting. And then whenever you're putting the pipes together, make sure that you're not putting undue pressure or stress on these fittings. So if I had, say this was a plastic fitting, and I try to get this around a corner or something, around a truss of some kind, of pulling on it like that, it's putting pressure on this and could snap or crack over time, which would be a bad deal having a leak. So if you can make sure you just take some time and plumb around things the way you should be, you'll be able to keep these things just right in line, no pressure on them, and you're going to get a lot more longevity and peace of mind, not having to worry about corrosiveness of the water. So if you're on city water, you could decide how you want to go about it. Just have your water tested and check it. But you want to make real sure that if you are going to do brass and you need the strength of brass, that you're getting that dezinkified brass, 15% or less, not the yellow brass, which is this down here. This one's made by Welday or Bluefin or whatever it is. The one thing too that you could do if you need brass fittings is you want the strength of that brass fitting, you like that idea, is wherever your well is coming into your home, so and it's servicing your home, it's going to have to go to a point wherever it's going to filter that water. You're going to be able to treat that water through a water softener, water filtration system, whole house water filtration system. Make sure you're plumbing from your well to your house with plastic fittings, so that's not corrosive. Then the other fittings beyond that point, say in that utility closet, wherever it's at, now we can possibly use some high quality brass fittings and not have to worry that these are going to be getting corrosive water, because we're treating that water before it's coming into the home. So that's another consideration, another way that you could deal with that. One other thing to consider if you're deciding between the plastic or the brass fittings is the fitting going to get exposed to any freezing temperatures or not? So if you're in an attic and there's potential or an outside wall and it gets a little bit of exposure to freeze, thaw, a lot of times this PEX will expand and it doesn't actually break the fittings. The brass will retain the strength a lot better than plastic. So over time, if you had this up in your attic or in a wall and it was getting cold, this thing could go bad on you prematurely. So you want to make sure if this is in the attic that you have your pipes are tensioned over with your insulation a lot better. So that's something to consider too. Fire sprinkler systems that we use in this house is made by, it's Uponor's AquaSafe system, and that only has an option for brass fittings, and those are up in the attic. So we got to make sure that we tent over the top of their insulation. So another consideration on plastic versus brass in a home. All right, well, I hope that was helpful going through those things to help you decide on what plumbing fittings you want to use in your house. If you'd like more information on building a custom home, a custom ADU, or doing a whole house remodeling project, you can visit our website at freemansconstruction.com. If you need help with buying or selling your home or land, visit our real estate company's website at freemansrealty.com. So thanks again for watching.